Hi, and welcome to Hidden Gems. I'm Sarah Walker, and today I'm with Dr. Jordan Bell, who wrote the very entertaining book, Aunt Jodie's Guide to Evolution. So first of all, I'd like to say welcome to the show, and thank you for being here.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Well, when I saw your book, I immediately thought that you had a biology background. So I was quite surprised when you told me that you're a psychologist. I'd love to know a bit about that. Like, what area of psychology do you work in, and did that background play any role in how you wrote the book?
It's a really good question. So, biology has always been a huge love of mine. And in fact, my undergraduate degree was a double major in psychology and genetics. And I've always found that my knowledge about biology really informs my psychology practice. So, I knew the material in the context of the book quite well. And I was also really aware of how knowing this information has always affected my thoughts about a whole range of topics, whether you're talking about things like stem cell research or racism in politics or an awareness of ecology or an understanding of medicine. And I knew that I wanted to share this kind of information with our future citizens. But if you're talking about psychology, I also drew really strongly from my developmental psychology studies in writing the book. So my PhD was in educational resilience, and I've studied a lot about what children can and can't understand at different ages. So in thinking about how best to share this information with a younger audience, I really found my psychology background useful.
So the initial inspiration for your book was the need to find books that had a strong STEM message for kids. So for anyone who doesn't know, STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. I actually looked that up. And so is there a reason why there aren't many books out there like yours?
Well, thankfully, there seemed to be an increasing number of books with STEM topics becoming available for kids, but I wasn't able to find anything that would give a really concrete and fundamental explanation of the factors underlying evolution, talking about specifically inheritance, variation, selection, and deep time, in a way that was suitable for kids who are in primary school. So my feeling was, if you can understand evolution at this fundamental level, you'll be able to understand how a lot of other things work by analogy. And also, I feel like an understanding of evolution is really crucial for developing informed citizens who can grow up to make sensible choices about their lives and our democracy. In Australia, we don't teach this material until students are 15, and I think that's too late.
Seriously, that late?
Mm.
But we learn at a much younger age here.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
People are completely able to do it, but the material's just not there yet. So I wanted to put it out in the world.
That's a good thing you're doing that then. So STEM careers have a long history of mostly appealing to boys. I know a lot of stuff is being done to change that, but do you think more can be done to bring more girls into science? And if so, what can parents or teachers do to make a difference?
Oh, that's a really important topic. And I think you're right about the historical appeal of STEM careers to boys. But again, thankfully, that seems to be changing. I've written about this a little bit as well. There's a link on my website, www.auntjodiesguide.com/girls and science. But basically, the research suggests it comes down to a few things if you really want to encourage girls to get into STEM. First of all, obviously, there's representation. Do these young kids actually grow up seeing women working in science and hearing stories about their amazing discoveries? For my own daughter, we've been reading books like Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls, and they've got great little tiny biographies of women who've done amazing things. But that idea of you can't be what you can't see, I think, is a really compelling argument for why we need to make sure the stories of women in STEM are getting out there. Secondly, it's really good to have a lack of strongly gendered language used in the home at school. So no more saying, oh, that's so like a boy, or, running like a girl. Just encouraging kids to play with all kinds of toys and making the toys be available to them, whether they're trucks or dolls, whether they're girls or boys. Then also there's a whole lot of really interesting books and movies and TV shows now that are coming out depicting lead female characters working in science and technology who have a lot of agency and plot lines of their own. They're not just there to be the sidekick or the love interest. And some really exciting research that's being done on reducing the gender science gap at university level with exercises, writing exercises that work to connect young women to their values. So basically, if you can encourage people to reflect on why it is that they want to study engineering or chemistry or computer science, you can almost completely eradicate the expected gender gap that you would previously have seen on maths and science tests. So I always get really excited when I hear about that. And then finally, I'd say probably thinking about just getting mentoring and encouragement of young women into these careers by senior women and men in the field. So if, parents or teachers have a young woman who's really interested in a STEM career, just helping her to meet older women and men in the field who will foster that interest.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So, do you hope that your book will inspire girls or kids in general to take an interest in science?
I think really my deepest hope with Aunt Jodie's Guide to Evolution is just that it helps all children who read it to have a better understanding of the way our world functions, so that whether they grow up to be scientists or artists or accountants or plumbers, they have a really good solid knowledge of the world to base any adult decisions they have to make.
Okay, thank you. So there are so many STEM subjects that you could have written in your book, but so why did you cover evolution?
There were two main reasons. So one, as I've already said, is I just really see this understanding of evolution as being so foundational to a well-informed understanding of science as an adult citizen. But the second is there are lots of places in the world, as you probably know, who are pushing back against knowledge of evolution, in particular, as part of a high school science curriculum. This is especially bad in America. And I'd really like parents who want their children to be informed on this important topic to have a resource they can use if the local school won't teach it.
Okay, thank you. So it's probably like a really weird thought that occurred to me when I was reading your book. So when you're writing it, you could have put in a time machine, to take your characters through the process of learning about evolution, but you stay true to science by using the thought experiment route. So was that an easy decision to make, or were you worried that it might not be as entertaining?
I guess it was a bit of a risk, but I'm glad that it seems to have paid off. I wanted the book to be based only on real science, so I didn't want to rely on imaginary situations or technologies that don't exist. And that's also why I spent so long researching the example of the Plesiads that's used in the book. So the information in there is based on the fossil record, and the book was actually reviewed by a professor of paleontology before publication to ensure that I was getting all my facts straight. It's been about 20 years since I did genetics at university, and I just really wanted to make sure my science was scrupulously correct according to our best current understanding. The story of the peppered moths that's in the book is another one I remembered from university, and I just really like the fact that in recent years there has been some scientific debate and some back and forth about whether they are actually a good example of evolution by natural selection, and then some really smart scientists did some very careful work to establish a scientific consensus that yes, they definitely are. So I thought that was another great example to use in the book.
Thank you. Well, you pretty much answered my next question. I was going to say, how did you decide that on the thought experiment? So I can skip over that, or do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that's really, it was just based on the idea of really needing to have the real science in there.
So this is my favourite question. Are you going to write another Aunt Jodie's Guide?
I really hope to. So my interest in this book was that it was a really great framework for expressing these ideas about evolution, and I think there's a lot of other topics that could have that really similar coverage, but I think I would really need to get a publisher involved if I do. This book was self-published, and honestly preparing a print run of 1,000 with 420 pre-sales was a lot of work as a side gig. So I've got several ideas about where to go next, and I was going to actually give my audience a chance to vote on whether I should tackle Aunt Jodie's Guide to the Solar System, Aunt Jodie's Guide to the Human Body, Aunt Jodie's Guide to Computers, or maybe even Aunt Jodie's Guide to Climate Change. So lots of options out there.
Where are you going to do this voting so that people know?
Oh, sure. They can join my Facebook group for Aunt Jodie's Guide to Evolution. If you search that in Facebook, it's pretty much the only thing that will come up. And there'll be a link in there in the next couple of weeks about being able to give your opinion on what we should tackle next.
Okay, thank you. So, right, I'm running this fun game. I can't remember if you said you wanted to do this or not.
Yeah, really happy to.
Yeah.
Okay. I've written something. Like, do you just want me to send it to you, or do you want me to read it out loud?
So, for anyone who hasn't watched this a previous episode yet, it's a game called What Happens Next, where I ask each person I interview to tell me the next part of the story. So, what I've got so far is every time I try to say this, I laugh. So sorry if I do. Spunky the monkey pulled his little diaper off and threw it on the window of the spacecraft. I just said it without laughing.
Where it tumbled to the ground, unseen by the occupants of the control deck who were focused on their pre-launch checklist. Spunky had only moments to reach the craft's interior before the outer doors closed for launch. Scampering over the rigging, holding the spacecraft upright, Spunky reached the edge of the structure with the open doors still tantalizingly out of reach. Swinging from the rigging by one arm to gain momentum, Spunky hurled himself towards the entrance, catching the edge with his outflung fingertips. Tensing his strong arms, he pulled himself up and into the airlock only seconds before the heavy door thudded into place behind him. A deep voice sounded over the speaker system. T-minus 30 seconds and counting. Spunky knew he had to get to the sick bay's spare acceleration couch before the countdown reached 0. He rounded the corner into the narrow corridor, loping on all fours for speed, towards his only hope for surviving the launch. Dot, dot, dot.
I love that. You should do like narration for books. That was really good. I can't wait to post this.
Excellent.
Right. Just to finish off, if you could say one thing about your book to people watching this, what would it be?
I think just that it's a perfect book for anyone who loves a young person and wants to foster their interest in science.
Thank you so much for talking to me today, and I will put links to your book, to your Facebook account, and everything for people to click on. And I hope to speak to you again for the future book.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sarah. It's been really lovely to chat.